Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Cabinet. I'm Spencer Flower. I'm leader of Dorset Council, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. Just a quick roll call of all the Cabinet are here. Peter Wharf, who's Vice Chairman, Ray Bryan, Graham Carr-Jones, Tony Ferrari, Jill Haynes, Laura Miller, Andrew Parry, Gary Suttle, and David Walsh. And officers with us today, Matt Prosser, Chief Exec, Aidan Dunn, Executive Director and Section 151 Officer, John Selgren, Executive Director Place, Teresa Levy, Executive Director Children, Vivian Broadhurst, Executive Director of Adults, Sam Crowe, Director of Public Health, Jonathan Mayer, Corporate Director and Monitoring Officer, David McIntosh, Corporate Director of HR and OD, and last but not least, Kate Critchell, Senior Democratic Services Officer. And our meeting producers today, Lillian Broad and Pauline Weld. Kate, I don't think we've got any apologies today, have we?
No, Chairman, no apologies.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the last meeting, colleagues. When I get the chance to sign them, can I sign them as a true record? Can we agree?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Important, obviously, you pick these up as and when they occur. I can't hear anybody, so I'll move on from there. Public participation, we've got 6 questions and 2 statements, and the questions and the statements will be read out in order by Matt Prosser, the Chief Exec, and Jonathan Mayer, the Corporate Director. So the first question is from John Culvert, and I'll pass over to Matt Prosser.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. So question from John Calvert, and my name is Matt Prosser, Chief Executive of Dorset Council. The Financial Management Report for Q2 has a section on forecast overspend on place. It states that most is due to a shortfall on income from car parks, commercial assets, etc. As a resident of Dorchester for 10 years now, the market on the Fairfield site has been a delight. It has coped with the virus and the coaches were back last week. It is important to Dorchester. Can the Cabinet please avoid a knee-jerk reaction such as seems imminent on car parking income and look at ways to develop / support the market now? Serious thinking needs to start now so that the situation does not drift through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Can I hand over to the Portfolio for Economic Growth, Assets and Property?
In fairness, Spencer, it's Ray that's going to take the response.
Sorry, Ray.
On
yes,
this.
You're right. You're right. Yes,
Yep.
It's Ray Bryan.
I'm Councillor Ray Bryan. I hold the portfolio for Highways, Travel and Environment, and also chair the EAP on the climate change and ecological emergency that we declared last year. In answer to your question, John, we are in support of the market at Fairfield site, and we are not actively looking at any form of parking strategy that would adversely affect holding the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. The next question's from Alastair Chisholm, and I'll invite Jonathan Mayer to read the question.
Good morning, members. The question from Alastair Chisholm, a Dorchester Town Councillor. At a time when the natural and man-made heritage of the county is likely to play an even greater role in Dorset's future economic prosperity, how will a massive development such as that proposed north of Dorchester assist in promoting the Dorset brand, whether that be as an essentially rural county with a World Heritage designated coastline and or Thomas Hardy country?
Thank you, Jonathan. I invite Councillor David Walsh to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I am Councillor David Walsh, Portfolio Holder for Planning. Dorset's environment and heritage are important for its economy, but Dorset also needs housing if its economy is to thrive. The availability and affordability of housing are important to enable businesses to attract workers. The Dorset Local Plan needs to provide for the economic, social and environmental needs of the area, allocating land for new homes and for businesses to grow, while protecting and enhancing the area's environmental assets. Previous housing growth has not harmed the local economy of the Dorset brand, and the local plan provides for environmental protection and enhancement alongside development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Now I've got a question from Ken Huggins, and I'll invite Matt Prosser to read the question, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So question from Ken Huggins, Parish Councillor for Hazelby Bryan Parish Council. And the question regarding the public consultation on the draft Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy and Action Plan. A period of only 6 weeks has been set for the public consultation on the Council's draft Strategy and Action Plan to address the climate and ecological emergency. The climate and ecological emergency is the most pressing and defining issue of our era, with potentially catastrophic consequences for every single one of us unless urgent action is taken now to avoid it. The effectiveness of any actions taken will depend to a significant extent upon the understanding cooperation of the general public. It is therefore vital that as many members of the public as possible are encouraged to engage with the Council's public consultation on its draft strategy and action plan. Given the relatively short period allowed for the consultation, how does the Council intend to publicise the consultation, and will it include an information document sent to every residential property with individual copies for every member of each household? Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Can I invite Councillor Ray Bryan to respond, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Ken, for the question. The Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy consultation period has been decided upon, so the results and the subsequent analysis of the consultation will be complete in time for the 2021-22 budget setting process, in order to ensure that work to progress the actions identified in the strategy can be delivered as quickly as possible. The consultation is accompanied by a comprehensive communications plan which aims to ensure that during the period of consultation, as many people as possible are made aware of the surveys and encouraged to take part. We gave residents advance notice of the consultation through our Dorset Council news magazine, which is delivered to all households in our area. We have already sent links to the strategy and consultation to over 30,000 residents via email, have issued a news release to all local media outlets, and will continue to publicise the survey via various channels throughout the course of the consultation period. Responses to the survey and response levels will be monitored throughout, and appropriate targeted additional communication efforts will be made to address any particular areas of concern, and I will be dealing more with this in my report later on the agenda. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. We've now got a question from Kaz Dennett, which Jonathan Mayer will read. Thank you.
Members, there are 2 questions from Kaz Dennett. The Climate and Environmental and Ecological Emergency Action Plan consultation period is set for 6 weeks. The Local Government Association website suggests 12 weeks is the best practice for consultations on substantial issues. Will Dorset Council please extend the consultation period to 8 to 10 weeks in order for people to really have a considered say in what is the most important issue of our lifetime, if not our human history, and to enable more people to engage, especially in structured community-based town council supported consultation events such as the People's Assemblies? And then the second question, what reasons would justify this request being declined, given that Dorset Council say they would like a high volume of responses?
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Invite Councillor Ray Bryan to respond, please.
Yes, I'll answer question 1 first. And that my response to that is, in the case of the Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy consultation, there is no minimum legal requirement for the length of consultation. Best practice actually suggests between 6 to 12 weeks. There is a comprehensive communications plan associated with the consultation, which aims to ensure maximum coverage is given to the opportunity to comment, and Dorset Council will be actively engaging with residents, councillors, town and parish councils via hosted webinars. In response to your second question, due to the need to progress work on the actions contained within the strategy, it has been decided that a 6-week period is most suitable, as it will allow the results and subsequent analysis of the questionnaire to be included in the 2021-2022 budget setting process. The 6-week consultation does not cover any holiday periods, and there has been substantial effort made prior to the consultation being published to raise awareness of the forthcoming opportunity to comment. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. We've now got a question from Penny Quilter, which Matt Prosser is going to read. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question from Penny Quilter. Thank you for providing an update on the future of the former council building at North Quay to Weymouth Together network of community organisations. We are working on a project charter for Dorset Council's consideration and would like to have a look at the building. 1, how do we get access to the building to assess its suitability for short-term use by the community? And 2, what is the total current monthly costs of maintaining these premises and what is the breakdown of the costs? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'd invite Councillor Tony Ferrari to respond, please.
Thank you. Tony Ferrari, I'm the portfolio holder for economic development and assets. Question number 1. Unfortunately, the building's not in a suitable state of repair at the present time to allow for short-term use by the community. It's the intention to engage with the community early next year with regard to the future of North Quay. And the second question about costs. The total annual cost at present for maintaining this building is £102,636 per annum, broken down as follows. Rates 95,760, security 2,555, repairs and maintenance 474, utilities 3,847. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. We've now got a question from Tricia Mitchell, which Jonathan Mayer is going to read.
Members, there are 2 questions from Tricia Mitchell. All of the indications point to there being a proposal in the local plan for a huge housing development beyond the water meadows of the River Frome immediately north of Dorchester. If this development goes ahead, how will Dorset Council ensure that 30% of the 4,000 plus houses proposed for this site will be affordable? And then the second question, how will the council ensure that these properties remain affordable in perpetuity?
Thank you, Jonathan. I'll hand over to Councillor David Walsh to respond, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Tricia, for your question. A draft consultation document will be coming to the next meeting of Cabinet in December. This will include a range of proposals across all of the Dorset Council area to meet the identified needs for housing and employment development. We need to meet the housing requirements of the area, but at this stage, proposals for where they should be built will not be set in stone. They will be published for consultation, and all the responses will be considered before members make any final decisions. Within the local plan, there will be policies setting out how much affordable housing should be provided on development sites. These policies have to be tested to make sure they are not going to be making development unviable. But we will be commissioning up-to-date evidence development on development viability as part of work on the local plan to make sure our position is robust and can be defended. We would enter into legal agreements with any developers to make sure that the housing is secured. There would be a range of tenures and affordable housing, as we need to follow the national definitions and policies on affordable housing. But rented and shared ownership housing will normally be managed in the long term by registered housing providers. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, David. And we've now got 2 statements. The first one from Andy Matthew, which Matt Prosser is going to read.
Thank you, Chair. So the statement from Andy Matthews is as follows. The following request refers to Portland specifically, but is intended to propose a general approach. Although I am involved with a number of organisations who are trying to take the island's future forward, I thought it would be easiest to avoid issues of perceived conflict if I set out my personal views on the above agenda item. I have many years' experience in roles where you have to be continually forward-looking and be able to anticipate change and the consequences of this. I've always supported the move to a unitary council as a strategic body, but equally endorsed an improved role for towns and parish councils and related delivery organisations, which are publicly accountable either via officers or members. The report on the property strategy and asset management plan sets out a rationale for the management of the public estate over the next few years, with the intention, with other local organisations under the One Dorset banner, to deliver on the objectives within the Dorset plan. The key evidence for me on progressing this is shown in Appendix 2, the profile of the asset base replicated below for ease of reference. And Andy Matthews has replicated the table that's in Appendix 2. It can be seen that the strategic aspects of the estate could be considered to cover those localities with more than 100 assets. It should be these that Dorset Council senior officers should be focused on, leaving the smaller areas to communities to resolve using a One Dorset agreed delivery framework. In this way, we can all be working on a common endeavour, bringing the skills which vest in our communities to achieve satisfactory outcomes. We have tried locally on a number of occasions to progress a joined-up approach to the rationalisation of the public estate and to consider future needs alongside this, but with only limited success. On Portland, we have set out a neighbourhood plan development framework which we believe can underpin this approach, but we also have an urgent need to deal with the relative deprivation that exists and which has recently reaffirmed in data from the ONS. When considering Agenda Item 8, therefore, I seek the Cabinet support for this manner of working. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I know it's a statement, but does the member for Economic Growth, Assets and Property wish to comment?
Thank you, if I could, Leader.
Please do.
Thank you for the statement, Andy. The property strategy and asset management not only considers the number of sites within an area, but also the potential commercial and social value that these sites can deliver. The Council wished to bring forward the development and repurposing sites as quickly as possible where this is viable and practicable to do so. In order to do so, and as stated within the strategy, the Council will consider a variety of delivery models, including, where applicable, working in collaboration with other parties and bodies. The first action for the Council is to identify and evaluate its assets to determine whether they are to be retained and developed or disposed of, and thereafter determine the approach and priorities for each of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. We've now got a statement from the Board of Portland Community Land Trust, and Jonathan Mayer is going to read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a statement then from the Board of Portland Community Land Trust. Portland Community Land Trust is a community benefit society which has as its objectives to deliver regeneration on Portland, and in particular to address the issue of local housing for local people. We've received support from officers at Dorset Council and from Wessex Community Assets. The Trust has a number of projects on Portland which it wishes to progress as a priority. And within these is derelict property at the High Street on Portland, which is currently owned by Dorset Council. The property has been in this poor condition for many years, and the Community Land Trust has been trying to progress its demolition and development for a number of years, for which we've received community support. The Community Land Trust also has a number of potential projects which may interwork with this site, improving its viability. Notwithstanding approval for the property and asset management plan by Cabinet, can we seek your support for an early determination of this site so that the Community Land Trust can move forward appropriately?
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'll invite Tony Ferrari to comment, please.
Thank you, Leader. As mentioned in the response to the previous statement, the first action is to undertake the evaluation exercise to determine whether assets are to be retained and developed or disposed of. This particular property will be considered as part of that programme, from which a decision will be made as to the best approach in dealing with it and the timescales in which this can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. We now move on to agenda item 5, which is questions from members, and we've got a couple of questions today. 2 questions from John Orrell, and can I invite John Orrell, therefore, to ask his first question, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll use my shortened version in the light of news. Would the Council use the lockdown to push for reform of the track and trace so it is local, and what other measures are intended?
Thank you very much, John. I think that's your second question, but I'll answer it anyway. In short, yes. There's a clear announcement of additional funding of £8 per head to support localising the test and trace system, along with the lockdown announcements on Saturday. Directors of Public Health are meeting at regional level with Public Health England to establish a new model for test and trace. In addition to this, Dorset Council has signed up with the Department of Health and Social Care to pilot the new rapid tests that are being made available. These will be helpful in being able to respond and test more quickly in our communities and support testing in high-risk settings, including schools and care homes. As well as localising test and trace, there will be additional work on communications and social marketing campaigns targeting specific groups in which we have seen barriers to comply with public health measures such as self-isolation. Enhanced support will also be stood up to protect the clinically extremely vulnerable. Thank you very much. You did have an earlier question, John, to do with county farms, I thought. You're muted.
Yes, my other question, thank you. Would the Cabinet agree to a new management policy for all county farms to ban all hunting of wild animals with dogs, including trail hunts that can inadvertently pick up fox trails and use a loophole to inadvertently kill wild animals? Thanks.
Thank you very much, John. I'll invite Tony Ferrari to respond, please.
Thank you for the question, John. The Hunting Act 2004 is law, and as such bans the hunting of wild mammals with dogs in England and Wales, and to do so is illegal. The council will not allow any illegal or unlawful activity to take place on its land and will only condone legal activities to take place. And at this moment in time, trail hunting is considered a legal activity. The county farms estate is the only area of land owned by the council where trail hunting takes place. County farms are leased to tenants, and it is for these individuals who manage the land to decide whether to allow legal activities to take place on the land. A prohibition on trail hunting, which manifestly interferes with the lawful freedom of those who take part in the sport, can only be justified if the council reasonably concludes that the prohibition is the best means of managing the land, which under the lease agreements currently in place is the responsibility of the tenants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much for your questions, John. And we've got a question now from Councillor Matt Hall. Are you with us, Matt?
I am, sorry. Councillor Matt Hall, Chairman of Audit and Governance, Councillor for Sherborne West. It was with regards to the proposed selling of any assets the council has. Can Councillor Ferrari confirm, please, what will be the democratic process and member involvement of that process? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'll ask Tony Ferrari to respond.
Thank you for the question, Matt. As identified within the Property Strategy and Asset Management Plan Cabinet Report under paragraph 11.15, Dorchester Office Estate, it's the intention to bring to Cabinet a separate paper with regard to the Council's office needs within Dorchester, including Southwarks House and its future strategy. This paper will be subject to the normal processes with regard to scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. We'll now move on to agenda item 6, which is the forward plan. I always start by saying it's an iterative process, and I think the latest edition demonstrates that very, very well. There are a few changes, but we've got to keep pace with the changing circumstances that we're faced with. And there are some additional items that have come on, one or two that have been deferred. So, Cabinet, are you content with the forward plan as presented today? Can you agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And we go on to, before we start the substantive items on the agenda today, I can just remind non-executive councillors that if they wish to ask a question or comment before I open up beyond, once the members presented the report, please do a request to speak in the chat box, and I'll allow you the opportunity, as I always have done, to make a contribution to this morning's Cabinet. So the first item is the Dorset Council Budget Quarterly Performance, and I'll hand over to Councillor Gary Suttle.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Gary Suttle. I'm the portfolio holder for finance. So as the Chairman has said, we bring forward the Q2 financial management report, and this is part of an ongoing promise to bring up-to-date financial information to the Council as soon as it's available. You will, I'm sure, recall the very dire outcome for Q1 of 43 million proposed, which would have been the outturn for the year, and therefore I suppose I'm pleased to tell you that this has gone down to 27 million, which seems a bit of an irony that we could possibly be pleased with such a deficit heading our way. However, in these very difficult and trying times, This is a fantastic achievement. It shows the commitment of the team that support the finances here. Certainly Aidan Dunn, Jim McManus, Katie Hale, all people who are working very, very hard to try and get us to 31st of March in as fit a position as we possibly can be. The report highlights in section 10, you will see the possible overspend or underspend in various directorates, which I hope you will find helpful. Since this report has been printed, there is slightly more improved news that as part of the government's £1 billion promise to local councils, we received a further 1.3 million. This is in fact incredibly disappointing, as under the previous calculations we would have anticipated something close to 4 million. Therefore, is by no means, where it's always helpful and we're not going to turn down money, it is of course a slight disappointment. In addition, we have other savings, so I can now report as we go into November rather, that we will have reduced the current prediction by a further £4 million. I think that's all I have to say, and we will continue to keep up to date. Clearly, what is happening now with the lockdown commencing on Thursday is a significant concern to our finances, and I will keep everybody up to date as soon as possible to know of any continual additional strain has arisen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gary. Before I open the debate, I noticed that Councillor Brian Heatley has a request to speak. So Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Brian Heatley, councillor from Rodwell and Wyke in Weymouth. I'm very glad, and I'm sure we all will be, to hear the news that the deficit is reduced quite substantially, and it's an important achievement. I am one of the many people who believe we will only be serious about climate change when we begin to see it figuring in our budget. So I was very pleased today to hear Councillor Bryan say that we were having a rather short consultation on the climate change and ecological emergency consultation to allow that to influence the budget process. However, I looked at the climate implications section of this paper, and it has, I think, probably the most incomprehensible one of these I've seen so far. Any specific climate assumptions required in the medium-term financial plan will need early confirmation from Cabinet. Can Councillor Suttle say a bit more about what that means, and does it mean in particular that there's some separate process from the ordinary budget process whereby any contribution that is going to be made towards the climate change programme will be dealt with? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Gary?
Well, thanks very much, Brian, for the question. And it is perhaps not the best wording in 3.1, and I understand any reticence you may have. As you know, I'm very committed to the climate change, and also very, very aware of the budget implications that this has. I am working with Councillor Bryan on this, and what it really says is we will give you as much early warning, Gary, as possible to tell you what we hope you will include in the coming budget. And that's very important to me right now, because currently we're facing probably a shortfall of anything, depending on what happens in the next month, between 11 and 15 million for the coming year's budget, which, as you know, we have to balance. So that is a difficulty. I would love to include a substantial amount in that budget for climate change, and I know that Councillor Bryan has the same aspirations. The question, Brian, is where am I going to get the money to tackle the 11 to 15 at the moment? And when I've done that, and I'm sure that working with the team that we'll do our absolute utmost to get to that position as early as possible before March, then we can start talking about additional. But right now the pressures certainly on adults and children is significant, and I'm sure you're aware of the possible health implications. You're also aware that on the last occasion of lockdown, the government made numerous promises about money, which usually we have to deliver, and so we're sort of very much in a difficult position right now, and I cannot commit to what figure will be included in next year's budget for climate change, and I hope you will appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks for the question, Brian. Thank you for the response, Gary. Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Leader. It's a two-part question which refers to 13.6 on the report, which is about the higher cost of agency staff. I'm wondering whether the portfolio holder can confirm roughly how much extra do agency staff cost compared to normal contracted employees? And the second part, and I think is quite the most important part, is are we using agency staff to fill short-term projects, or are we having to use agency staff because we cannot find the qualified staff on the open employment market? Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Gary?
Well, thanks, Matt, for that splendid question. I really do appreciate it. I can't actually give you the specific numbers, but I will come back to you with those. But what I'd like to say is that it's one of those areas that we are targeting as an area that requires attention and in which we have identified a number of savings. It comes about third highest in some of the budgets that we use in procurement, and I very much want to understand why we're using so much agency staff and how that we can put that right. And I'm working with other members of the cabinet, in particular Jill Haynes, on the DWP, where they have quite a high number of agency staff, and it may well be a question of the way in which our policy impacts on the various cost centres, and we may need a fundamental change. And I'm working on that, and I look forward to coming back to you with an answer. But in the meantime, I believe you and I have a call this afternoon anyway, Matt, and I will try and give you some more of the specific numbers then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. Thanks for your question, Matt. Councillor Nick Ireland.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is item 22.3, bracket C, which is the very last paragraph in the report, basically on, I think it's page 56. It's probably easier if I just read it out. So the paragraph says that the council will continue the challenge around the current budget round, which combines the identification of tactical savings with the development of a transformation programme which enables the council to meet the needs of Dorset's residents within the funding which is available. So my question is, can Councillor Suttle elaborate on what that means for the residents of Dorset Council and also the staff of Dorset Council, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Gary?
Thank you, Councillor Ireland, for the question. I think what is very important to get the message across, which I've been trying to do in the last few months to all members and also to the employees of the council, is about working together to bring about any fundamental changes that we require, and that if they identify transformational savings, we will be prepared to invest, to save, and that I've tried to embody a culture of maybe, not no, to this organisation. If we get it right, and as you will know, Councillor Highland, that getting it right is the most important thing. It will impact on all lives, so that we can maintain services or improve services, and that we can give everybody a better outcome throughout Dorset. And it's here to do, and there is a will within this council to do it, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. Thanks for your question, Nick. I've got no other questions. Cabinet, are you any points you want to clarify? Are you content to accept Gary's overview of the first quarter performance?
Second quarter.
Can we agree? Sorry,
Agreed.
Second, yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Right, we'll move on then to agenda item 8, which is property strategy and asset management plan. And I'm going to hand over to Councillor Tony Ferrari.
Thank you, Leader. This paper is the final stage of the merger of Dorset's 6 councils. We brought together the staff to deliver services to the people of Dorset. We now need to create the right asset base from which to deliver that service. Dorset inherited over 1,400 properties, from county hall to tiny patches of grass, county farms, leased businesses, premises and shops. The list is enormous. All were wanted at some point by our predecessor councils, but over the years, what councils do and how we do things have changed. What we need to do now is to plan and make available the assets and buildings that the council needs for the future. There are a number of strands that this policy looks to deliver. One of the key results is to have the right buildings in the right place for delivering our services, but there are others. Particularly in the post-COVID-19 world, we must do this at the lowest day-to-day running cost. We will also identify assets that are no longer needed. This will give us opportunities. Some we may simply sell to generate capital receipts that the council will need to invest in service delivery. Others we will look to develop. This may be to deliver housing, but it may also be to allow us to deliver other outcomes beneficial to Dorset's community. Similarly, there are a range of ways that we may take forward these opportunities. We might simply sell, or we might use the enormous range of collaborative opportunities that are currently available. We might work with other public sector bodies, town and parish councils and the voluntary sector. But it might be that we also do not currently have the assets which we need for service delivery, in which case we'll need to purchase to enhance our asset base. This paper sets out the principles upon which we'll go forwards. It also identifies the delivery plan for the strategy. The first step is to identify those buildings that we will need for service delivery. The preparatory work, talking to the service delivery parts of the council, is the first step. Do they still need all of their buildings? The way the council will work post-COVID-19 will be very different to the way it worked before. Buildings and land has been identified by predecessor councils for various purposes. Are they all still needed? From answering these questions, we'll draw up the list of assets that we must do something with. As I said earlier, some we may sell, some we may develop on our own or collaboratively. This paper will allow us to deliver better services to the residents of Dorset at lower cost, tying up less investment and freeing up a broad range of assets to be better used across the county. I commend the recommendations to council and I would welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. There is a request to speak from, but I've got a member of the cabinet. Jill, I'll come back to you in a moment. Matt Hall.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Ferrari's semi-aware of this question. In Appendix 2, there is the listing of each of the towns with their number of assets. I think it would be really helpful if ward members were made aware of what those assets were. Sherborne is listed as having 62 assets, which by reading this agenda item, you would suggest that those would either be buildings or land that could be sold. Well, I've spoken to Councillor Andrews, we've walked the town, and to be honest with you, other than thinking it must include 30 manhole covers, I'm struggling to find out where the 62 are. So I just think it would be really helpful and a bit more of an accurate assessment of the assets we've got if each ward member was aware of what you are listing here. Could that be done, please?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and thank you for the pre-asking me the question. Unfortunately, another group of people got in first. The MPs asked exactly the same questions for each of their constituencies, and I set the officers off doing the geographical analysis by constituency. So as soon as that's available, I'll publish it to each of the ward councillors who map onto each of the constituencies. Clearly want to make that available to all of the councillors so that you can make sensible comments about use of the council's assets within each of your own areas. Very happy to do that.
Thank you, thanks, Matt, and thank you, Tony. Before I open this up to the cabinet, I've got Councillor Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I just wanted to It's Councillor Shane Bartlett for Wimbledon Ward and Chairman of Scrutiny and Placer Committee. I just wanted to highlight the fact that as this is obviously going to be in some regards a controversial move by the council in some respects with some of the assets we're going to be dealing with, I just wanted an assurance that we will be going through a scrutiny process in this on a step-by-step basis. Certainly with some of the disposal of the assets, we would need to scrutinise those. So I just wanted to say, as Chairman of Scrutiny, I will expect this to come back on a regular basis to the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Tony?
Could I comment before scrutiny? Some of these proposals may be controversial, but I don't want to make controversial proposals that communities are unaware of before they come forwards. So long before we produce plans or subject them to scrutiny, we intend to go out to local communities and say, we've got these assets, what do you think we should do with them? These are what we're thinking of doing with them. So we develop proposals collaboratively with communities, and at that point we'll bring forward through scrutiny and cabinet papers as appropriate, all of the normal processes. The aim of the exercise is not to surprise anybody, it's to bring forward things that people know and understand the reasons for doing them. I'm very happy to go through the scrutiny process as part of that. Thank you.
Tony, can I assume that you'll include town and parishes in that?
Yes, absolutely. One of the key partners.
They're quite vitally important, aren't they, on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you for your question, Shane.
Thank you.
I've got no other non-executive questions here, so I'm going to open it up to the Cabinet. Jill, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Jill Haynes. I have a portfolio for community and customer services. And I'd like to ask Tony if he could elaborate a bit more. There's obviously a huge amount of work done here, and if we're not careful, we could get swamped with the requests for buildings and who's going to do not what with what next. And I just wondered how we're going to prioritise this as we go forward. I think it'd be really useful for people to understand that. I think I totally appreciate, with my connections with the town and parish councils, that we'll be talking to them about how they feel that their towns or parishes should be looking at the assets. But if you could just talk a bit about the prioritisation, that'd be really helpful.
Thank you, Jill. Tony?
Yeah, thank you, Jill. I probably need at the start of this answer to ask for the forbearance of the various partners that we're going to be working with. We won't be able to do all of this stuff at the same time. The officers that have got to do it are the same people who are doing the COVID-19 return to the office plans, the scheme to repair the harbour walls in Weymouth. They fixed the leaky taps in County Hall. There's a huge pile of business as usual stuff that goes on, so we're going to have to prioritise. So the first cut will be the most important things, both for service delivery, economic impact, and the Dorset's life. I know there's an enormous bubbling ambition on the part of bodies all over Dorset to get on with things. We saw the one from Portland this morning. That's a building that needs something done with. We want to get on with it, but we won't be able to do them all at the same time, so we'll have to do them in groups and prioritise. So yes, it's a real issue, but we'll also get there. This is a really important thing that we need to work through, and there's a timetable at the back where you can see how we're planning to get through things. So it's a real issue. We won't do them all at the same time, but we will work through all of the problems and deliver outcomes for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. This is very much the start of a 10, isn't it? There's a massive amount of work beyond today's report. So I can't see any other Cabinet colleagues wishing to speak. Is there anyone wishing to make a contribution, or can we agree the recommendations as set out in the report? Agreed. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item 9, Transformation Programme Annual Report, and I'll hand over to Councillor Peter Wharf.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning to Cabinet members and to members of the public. I'd like to present a report on the transformation plan, and could I ask that the first slide, thank you very much, of the presentation is put up. I want to pick some To start with, the transformation plan was developed and established over a year ago, and we were very concerned in order to build upon the combination of 6 different organisations into one, that we were able to use the opportunities. We were slightly derailed by COVID-19. What I want to do today is one thing we set up right at the beginning that hasn't been derailed, which is we wanted to present every year an annual report upon achievements in the past year and what we were doing going forward into the following year. So this is in order to establish good governance. It's a demonstration of the plan moving forward and what we've done looking backwards. I've done it as just a very few slides, primarily for the benefit of, first of all, members who are not detailed involved in this, and for members of the public, so that they can actually understand at a high level what it is we're trying to achieve. Second slide, please. Thank you. When we started, the transformation programme was largely about conversions post one council, i.e. we were trying to put 6 organisations into one, and we were trying to drive out inefficiencies and do things differently, which took advantage of our size and our ability to move better and have less bureaucracy in the way. However, the original transformation was looking at £3 million per annum. We've now got a budget gap of 41.9, and you heard from Gary that it is improved to the high 20s, but the fact is it is still huge. And what we have to do is we have to align the transformation plan to support our council plan delivery, which is also agreed a little while ago. But we have to recognise that actually that's going to be affected quite dramatically by using this opportunity to maximise on the opportunities that COVID has presented. So we need to use, although it sounds quite ghoulish, we need to use some of the benefits of this pandemic to make sure that we don't lose some of the benefits that has been brought about by it. And there are a whole host of things, but if I can give one just small, but I think quite instructive example, when we started, we had a target to achieve a majority of digital meetings using remote access within 5 years. We've actually achieved that in 5 months because the crisis has forced us to move that way. We may have moved back to some physical meetings or hybrid meetings at some stage, but we will not go back to totally physical meetings, I don't think. Next slide, please. Thank you. We've got a series of activities that we've completed or are in good progress on over the last year, and I'm going to be requesting that the relevant cabinet members and one of the officers comment on this briefly, but this is part of the governance that we said we'd report on what it is we'd achieved over the last year. And I'll be asking Councillor David Walsh to talk briefly on the planning systems, Deborah Smart, officer, to talk about the convergence of ICT solutions into one domain. I'll talk to Deborah and others about initiation of the Dorset workplace to review the ways of working. David McIntosh may care to say a few words. Councillor Laura Miller would undoubtedly like to say a few words on Blueprint for Change, which is absolutely fantastic in terms of what it's setting out to do. We've got the Dorset Care Record, and I'll be looking for Councillor Laura Miller to comment on that. I'll be looking for Deborah Smart to talk about where we're going in terms of management of archived paper records, which may sound boring, but actually is a really interesting project and is part of our transformation. And we do have other transformation bids in progress, but I'm not going to talk about these because they're going through a really careful process. The first is stage 1, where we say, is this an idea that's worth spending some time on? And the second is stage 2, where we say, okay, we've agreed that we're going to spend some time on it. Now let's have a look at a more detailed financial and benefits analysis related to it. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this list. Councillor David Walsh, could you say a few words on the conversion of planning systems, please?
I thank you, Peter, for the opportunity to praise planning, but I curse you for saying I've got to do it briefly. That doesn't happen in planning, sorry. But where are we at present? It was a huge task that we undertook, trying to bring all of these different IT systems and that into one. But I can tell you where we are now, and I'm very proud to say that at the end of September marked a significant milestone in the planning services transformation project, with go live of the new planning management system on the 30th, with planning, conservation, legal agreements, appeals and building control converging for the northern area, also including local land charges, tree preservation and enforcement. And we are currently working on former West Dorset, which we are aiming to go live with in mid-December, and following that will be Weymouth and Portland, but that won't be until the start of next year. I would just like to praise all of the transformation team and all of the officers on the planning side. They have worked so hard to work together. And I remember saying to them, and I do remember you said briefly, I remember saying to them at the first meeting we had that though they'd heard this before, this transformation was going to actually happen. And I'm very pleased to say that they are pleased to see that this is actually happening, and it's a benefit to Dorset, and it will end up being a financial benefit to Dorset Council as well. So thank you for the opportunity, Peter.
Thank you very much, David, and I appreciate Blueprint for Change. I should have said Councillor Andrew Parry and not Councillor Laura Miller. I apologise about that. Can I ask, excuse me, can I ask Deborah Smart to comment briefly on convergence of ICT solutions to one domain?
I can, thank you. This is the project which is underpinning bringing all of our IT technology, led by the IT operations department, to make sure that we can access all applications and all of the council's technology functions from one place, and removing that underlying infrastructure that used to support the previous councils. It's a very important project, although it can be seen to be a bit internally focused, but it does help us to seamlessly serve the citizens and residents of Dorset.
Thank you very much, Deborah. That's very useful. Now, if David McIntosh would like to say a few words, I'd be grateful on the initiation of the Dorset Workplace to review ways of working. If not, I can make the comments myself. David, can you say a few words, please?
Peter, it's Aidan Dunn here.
Aidan,
I can cover this. So Aidan Dunn, Executive Director for Corporate Development. The Dorset Workplace, it was something that was an initiative that was reviewed and approved by Cabinet last month, just looking at the way that we as a council operate and the flexibility and the agility of the workforce, and then aligning that to the estates strategy that we've just looked at in terms of the corporate property. So this is about our new way of working as an organisation, a flexible workforce, and it's about the future. So a very good project that's well underway.
Thank you very much, Aidan. And we have discussed the Dorset Workplace at previous cabinets, and we will be discussing it at future cabinets. Thank you. The next item is Blueprint for Change. Councillor Andrew Parry, again, I apologise. Would you like to say a few words on this, please?
Thank you, Peter, and no apology required at all. I think you probably made Laura panic for a moment that she had even more on her plate. Could I just say in a general term, first of all, I have always been a big advocate of changing the way we work and embracing some of these 21st century principles, particularly around the concept of permitting staff, where appropriate, to work from home or out of home, as well as in an office-based setting. And one of the things that we have seen in this period of time is a huge embracing of that very, very successfully. And I know that brings reassurance to those who were sceptical about such a move. Similarly, we had our sceptics when we set about Blueprint for Change, the move to a locality model, embedding a delivery of local service firmly in the local communities in proximity. That process was quite protracted, and we started delivering the locality model in earnest from September. In particular, we've seen some really positive feedback, and I'm indebted to our partners in the schools who have commented very positively on the prominence of educational psychologists inside the locality model. It doesn't stop there for us. We are ambitious for children's services and the children of Dorset and young people that we represent. And further moves will be coming forward. We are already aware of our ambitions around the Dorchester Road premises, which will ensure that we can bring more of our children back into county who are currently in care outside of the area, or indeed retain our children inside county. So, and I'm sure there will be further ambitions that I will want to bring forward to future cabinets, but I did like to say I'm incredibly grateful to colleagues for all the support I've received during the process of Blueprint for Change. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you very much. And it is one of the most exciting projects that we are undertaking. It's something that we really could only undertake as one single organisation, and it's something I commend members to go and talk to Andrew about, because Andrew would be only too delighted to engage with you and hopefully involve you. The next element is the continued development of the Dorset Care Record. Councillor Laura Miller, would you like to say a few words on this, please?
I'd love to. Would you like me to say a few words about our transformation as well?
Yes, actually, because I would say to members that I chaired on Thursday a 2-hour meeting of the performance group, the performance leadership group, which was a particularly long but really helpful, constructive meeting at which Laura and one of her projects figured large. Laura, over to you.
No problem. I won't talk about children's services if that's okay. I think Andrew's covered. So yeah, we brought our transformation bid, as Peter said last week. Really, we looked for an investor save process for Dorset adult social care. We're focusing on our themes for people to have an independent life, staying healthy, being really integrated into the community, and looking at the opportunities we offer people, rather than having a kind of paternalistic approach. We want to deliver work which is already underway through our Better Life programme, and this moves our offer to a strength-based culture, which means that people can make their own decisions at the right time about what support they would like to have. And just very briefly, this includes focusing on improving services and provision. We've got better days to live a better life, looking at our day opportunities and our learning disability residential services, supported living, assisted technology, all of those things. Great partnerships, so we look with our providers, our community and our workforce, because we know we've got work to do with those guys, and looking at the right systems. So that's building a better life, looking at our council system, our relationships, our business intelligence, and really the whole of the resilience and strength across the health and social care system. This is really important because this is evidence-based, it's led by the people that we serve, and it is a huge culture change, but it's one that we believe will deliver the right outcomes for our residents, but also save money. And that leads me neatly, I think, to the Dorset Care Record. Really, really important, this, and it's the first shared health and care record in England, which is working through the complexities of handling really sensitive records and sharing them from NHS Digital's personal demographic services. I've got that right. And it's a really complex piece of work, and we work with our partners to sign and train up staff. We've got nearly 2,000 I think trained staff this year. Our records are up to 14,000 plus, and those are shared care records. So what this means is that we can, for example, Yeovil Hospital are now being trained in this. Community pharmacies are given access in May this year to the care records, so they can see, access really easily people's data. We've got clinic letters and emergency discharge summary from our United Hospitals Dorset going into the care record, endoscopy, cardiology. We're adding all of these things in, including our community physical health data from Dorset Healthcare. So you can see just from that the massively wide range of partners that we're working with. This is really exciting, and it will cut out bureaucracy, and it will save time, and more importantly, people get a better service. So, like my colleague Andrew, I'd really just like to thank all the teams, because like our colleagues in children's, we are undergoing this huge cultural change. There is so much work going on that I could hog the whole of Cabinet talking about it, but I won't. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Laura, and Laura will undoubtedly be delighted to talk to any member who wishes to talk to her about the programme. She is quite rightly very excited about it. We all are, and it is a genuinely transformational programme, which is what we're in the business of.
Peter, if I may come back just very briefly for a small plug.
Yeah.
Myself and my lead members, Simon Gibson and Piers Brown, will be holding regular surgeries for members and also all of our staff in adults, and those will just be very informal bookable surgeries where you can just come and chat to us, and information about that will go out in the next couple of days.
Thank you, Laura. plug accepted, and it's good news. The new solution for the management of archived paper records. Deborah, were you going to talk about that?
I'll just say very briefly that this is a new project to look at how we archive paper records, and will clearly support us moving towards digital ways of working, as well as managing the paper legacy well.
Thank you. And it will be cheaper, more effectively, more accurate, and we will get higher data quality from it. I would just like to say that all of these bids are not only being driven by the cabinet member, but are absolutely at the centre of the work of the individual staff who are dealing with it, who are absolutely passionate about doing these because they recognise the benefits they'll bring. There are also a variety of other bids which I'm not going to go into because they are either at very early stages, and it would be unfair to try and highlight something that may end up not getting off the ground, and we want to try and tease out as much as we can the potential from various areas. But I do have a number of exciting opportunities that I look forward to coming forward in the next few months. Next slide, please. I've got 2 slides or 3. The first thing is we just need to think about how we go about transformation, and much of this is what we were doing anyway, but actually it's either slightly changed or it's more important. We need to place shape. We need to optimize our community capacity and assets to get the best out of it, helping the community. We need to get in early, but we need to involve people. We need to be smart in the use of our assets, estate and capital, which is what Tony Ferrari talked about. We need to be a commercial council that demonstrates value for money, and we're producing significantly improved value for money metrics in order to achieve that, which audit are aware of. And we've got a program about the workplace, and we want to be a great organisation to work in and with, and be an employer of choice. And that is still a reasonable goal. It's the right thing to do, even in the middle of a pandemic. Next slide, please. So how will we change? Well, we've got to think about a variety of things. One is we must not lead on absolutely everything. There are occasions when we should let parish, town councils or other bodies take the lead, and we should support it. So we need to be careful not to think it's all about us leading. We need to have customers at the centre of our thoughts, but we need to recognise that lower cost and reduced carbon footprint related to climate change need to be absolutely at the front of our thoughts. We need to have some long-term investment, which is why we have a transformation board that sits and thinks about these things and tries to take clear decisions and have good governance related to it. We've got a business insight division that provides evidence for the performance management, and we can only take good decisions if we've got really high value data. What we've got to use well, and if we've got something that we're not using well, we need to think about how else we might use it. And again, that's Tony Ferrari. We've got a series of digital champions who are working really well with a variety of people in order to ensure that no one in Dorset is disadvantaged digitally. And we've just finished a Festival of the Future seminar, which had people from all over the country. We are a leader in digital technology in terms of the way we're working. And we need to be innovative and ambitious if we're going to be an employer of choice. Next slide, please. Right. So let's not think that this transformation plan is all about savings. It isn't. It's much more serious than that. It's about how we move the organisation forward and how it can make lasting change to the benefit of our residents within the constraints of our costs we've got. And there are 3 icons I've got on this slide that you can see. On the left are the council values, the council plan, and the key areas that we said we were going to concentrate. In the middle are our values that we want employees to recognise and members to recognise, and then the goals that we're looking for and the areas of focus in terms of being an employer of choice, customer focused, a sustainable organisation, and we want to be effective and modern. Now, nobody is saying that there isn't some conflict between some of those, but those are worth working for, and that's what we've agreed, and that's what we're moving forward to. Leader, I'll stop there and glad to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Very good overview of all the work's been going on, and thanks to the our cabinet colleagues who've contributed to the presentation this morning. There aren't any questions coming from non-executive members, so I'll open it up to the cabinet. Any further comments, or are we happy? I think we're receiving this report this morning, so
yeah.
Are we all happy to receive it? Agreed?
Agreed.
I take silence as
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on. We've got 3 items coming up now, all to do with housing. So the first item is Dorset Council Housing Allocations Policy 2021, and I'll hand over to Graham Carr-Jones.
Thank you, Leader. Graham Carr-Jones, Portfolio Holder, Housing, Community Safety. The first item, I see, the Housing Allocations Policy. Cabinet are being asked to recommend to full council the adoption of the Housing Allocation Policy, which is contained within Appendix 1 of the report, and is also delegated authority for the Portfolio Holder for Housing and Community Safety to make minor amendments to the policy, and any amendments as necessary to reflect any legislative changes. Last week, the People and Health Overview Committee considered the policy. They asked questions about the policy, including ones of local connection, financial resources, limits, managing expectations, and all of these were answered at the time. They're in the report here. The Overview Committee also asked how the policy would be monitored in the future, and it was agreed that details of the way that we'll monitor will be provided to committee at a later date. The Overview Committee also asked whether incentive schemes for households who are under-occupying could be considered. Again, it was agreed that consideration can be given outside of the policy. Therefore, there's no change to the overall recommendation of the report. The Overview Committee agreed the recommendations unanimously and in full. The chairman remarked actually that he'd researched other councils' policies and he had found the Dorset Council policy to be an exemplar nature, which is high praise indeed, Leader. Under Part 6 of the Housing Act 1996, local authorities have been under a legal duty to have a scheme that regulates the allocation of social housing. It's also a legal requirement for Dorset Council to formally adopt the Housing Allocations Policy by 2022 as part of the Structural Change Order for Local Government Reorganisation. Housing allocations were previously a function managed by district and borough authorities within their own schemes. So this policy creates one scheme for Dorset Council. What I must reiterate is the policy itself will not solve the council's housing need. However, it seeks to house those appropriately within the housing that we have and we manage. They're approaching 6,000 households currently on our social housing register. The policy supports the work of the housing service, who must manage the expectations of our applicants to the scheme and offer other housing advice and support outside of the scheme. Chair, as we don't own our own housing stock, we work in partnership with social landlords who offer tenancies to households using our scheme. Now, we've worked with a cross-party member executive advisory panel and partners across the organisation and within the community to design a new scheme. We had, Chair, over 700 responses to our consultation. The scheme lays out a framework that describes how we will manage the complex process of accessing social housing. A lot of the scheme is defined in statute, but the new scheme has reviewed and updated the legislative requirements. It also receives the discretionary provision for managing the allocation of social housing by prioritising households according to their needs, whilst being fair and accessible to all and reflecting our corporate strategy. In order to inform the scheme and determine priorities, we undertook a public consultation and assessments of relevant information and data and asked people and organisations for their views on social housing. We also asked the National Practitioner Support Service to work with us during the development of the policy. They are a national organisation of experts working with local authorities and have a goal of improving frontline housing and homelessness services. They carried out a desktop reviews
of our policy before and after the consultation, and they provided us with feedback, highlighting good practice and offering recommendations for enhancement. We're most satisfied that the process has been inclusive and has been commended by the National Practitioner Service, who will recommend our approach as an example of best practice. The Housing Service is currently working with Neil Morland & Co. housing consultants, who are an independent company working throughout Great Britain as a leading authority on housing needs, homelessness, housing allocations and housing support. The new policy has been reviewed by their experts and suggested enhancements have been included. There were some legislation tweaks there, Chair. Leader and colleagues, there will always be some scenario that we have not envisaged, and that is why the members of the EAP sought and proposed a scheme which included flexibility and discretion within its framework. This will allow the service to respond to individual household circumstances appropriately. This flexibility will also allow us to respond to changes in legislation and guidance throughout the lifetime of the policy, and that the portfolio holder can approve that. For example, Chairman, the new domestic abuse legislation, which is anticipated in January 21, and while the new housing service is working with colleagues and partners to ensure the policy reflects any new requirements, the final decisions are yet to be included. In addition to the formal reviews, Chair, we expect to monitor the policy annually and stay informed about how it impacts our customers to inform future development and identify any necessary actions. Leader, before I move the recommendation, could I also put on record our thanks to the cross-party EAP on housing, and yet more importantly to Sharon Atwater, Sarah Howe and Team Housing for bringing together this in a timely fashion. There's really been a tremendous amount of work in this policy, Chair, so I'd propose a recommendation.
Thank you very much, Graham. Before I open up to the Cabinet, I've got a request to speak from Councillor Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Graham. It was a good report. And also, Chair, I'd like to thank Graham for meeting a cross-party group of councillors, including myself. Housing, as I've always been very passionate about public housing, possibly from my own humble beginnings, and like yourself, we've all experienced homelessness. I remember when I first came to Weymouth, I was with my wife and I at the time, we were homeless. But I feel a lot of the work you're doing is great, and I commend you and the Cabinet for steering this route, and possibly our housing specialist. But I feel, Chair, that there needs to be more accountability within this area of housing with the members. I happen to believe that public housing is probably one of the most important areas that we can work in. As you know, I think it was the last full council, there was one of the councillors who requested a housing committee. Now, again, I think this again is feeling this frustration that the work that you're doing is if you like, is being held, and I think we need to be able to get out and talk about it better and more, and I believe a housing committee would be a way forward. Now, I'm not saying that you tie yourself up into tremendous amounts of committee work, but I believe there should be, and I as you know, and I always stand by that we should start to think about owning our own stock, i.e., as you know, I'm a great lover of the old-fashioned council housing, and I think that's got to be a thought of for the way forward. I thank you for that, Chair, for giving me a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Graham, do you want to comment?
Yeah, just in response to things Councillor Kim said, Paul, thank you for your comments, and I also recognise your passion towards housing. One of the things when we talk about accountability, I'm aware that Councillor Jill Taylor's scrutiny committee has undertaken to do some work around the scrutiny of the RPs, of which I and Andrew Blaney will be more than happy to assist in that work. I've also undertaken with Andrew to start producing a member briefing on housing, because there's, like as Paul said, there's an awful lot of really good stuff going on at the moment, and it's down to us to communicate that to the wider membership, so that we're undertaking to do this briefing quarterly. But having said, this was decided before the announcement that was made earlier in the week, so your forbearance will be, all of members, on not putting the team under pressure. They have a day job to get on with, and it's going to just get a little bit harder come Thursday. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Graham. We've got a request to speak from Councillor Les Fry.
Thank you, Leader. I would just like to support Councillor Kyle Jones in his bringing this report to Council. It's a good report, a good policy. A lot of work's gone into it. The officers have done a huge amount of work on it, and I'm very grateful to all of them and would like to pass on my thanks. And as I said, support Graham Kyle Jones on this.
Thank you very much, Les. I'm sure Graham was delighted with that support you've just given him.
Yes, thank you, Les.
Thank you. There's no other non-executives requesting to speak, so I'll open it up to the Cabinet. Colleagues, if you've got any comments to make to Graham, it's a good report. Picking up on what he said earlier, I was going to say some of the things he said, because I think it's a really good piece of work that's been done here. It's a really sound policy. It's got lots of accolades around the quality of the work going forward, and hopefully that full council on the 10th of December will be able to approve it. So any comments from colleagues, or can we agree? Agreed?
Agreed.
Chairman,
thank you very much.
Graham, very briefly, Jim, just come back to that. Just had a message come through from Shane Bartlett, who said in 8.2 of the report he's not mentioned as being on the EAP, and he was actually a valued member of the EAP, as were all of them.
Okay, I'm sure we can correct that record, because I know Shane always makes a really good contribution. So let's move on to agenda item 11 now, the Housing Standards Enforcement Policy, etc., etc. Graham.
A Cabinet's being asked to adopt a new housing standards enforcement policy, which is contained within Appendix 1 of the report. Again, the policy was considered by the People and Health Overview Committee on the 27th. The committee had a number of questions about the policy, which officers addressed at the time, but I'm pleased to say that the Overview Committee agreed to recommend that Cabinet adopt the policy without amendments. The policy is used by the Council's Housing Standards team, who have a duty to respond to requests about poor housing conditions, and this policy provides officers with guidance to assist them in making proportionate and fair enforcement decisions. The team has a wide range of powers, from serving legal notices, prohibiting the use of buildings, to prosecuting offenders and issuing penalty notices. Action can be taken against houses, flats, houses in multiple occupation, empty homes, and on park homes. So rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, Chairman, the policy aims to ensure that action is taken that is safe and is legal and appropriate to the specific aspects of each case, considering the many factors, the evidence available, and the public interest. The policy is primarily aimed at a minority of property owners, landlords and letting agents who fail to provide accommodation that is unsafe and does not meet minimum housing needs, who the government has termed them as rogue landlords. This action ensures that a wide range of homes, generally rented homes, are safer to live in and that the minimum standards are met. This helps protect people's health and safety, reduces accidents, improves their well-being, and generally improves our communities for the good. The policy accounts for a wide range of new housing enforcement powers, including the enforcement of minimum energy efficiency standards in rented homes, new electrical safety standards, including updated fees and charges for the relevant actions and licenses. However, in general, the policy is not significantly different from those of the original sovereign councils, and that being the case, Chairman, I recommend that Cabinet adopt the policy.
Thank you very much again, Graham. There are no requests to speak in the chat box, so I'll go over to the Cabinet. Colleagues, any comments, or are you happy to content to accept the report and the recommendation?
Consent.
Can we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 12, private sector housing assistance policy. Graham, it's still you.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope you don't get fed up with me. I've got
No, absolutely not.
papers here. Again, Cabinet are being asked to adopt the private sector housing assistance policy, which is contained within Appendix 1 of the report. Again, the People and Health Overview Committee considered the policy and recommended the policy be adopted. But they also suggested a minor amendment that the loan criteria be changed to help people who are considering fostering, which I think is this is one of the positives of getting in front of another committee there, Chair. Officers can deal with that suggestion as a minor amendment to the policy under the recommendation 2 of the report, and therefore there's no change in the overall recommendation of the report. The policy sets out how the council can help to improve private sector housing in a number of different ways. This includes adaptations for disabled people, the handy van service, improving energy efficiency, bringing property up to a decent home standard, and repairing and improving older park homes. The policy includes details of how grants and loans are administered, and importantly, sets the eligibility criteria for those applying. In April 2019, the existing housing policies from district and borough councils novated over to Dorset Council. Now, although these policies were similar, there are differences, which means that currently there's an uneven playing field across Dorset. For example, someone in East Dorset cannot currently access a decent homes loan, whereas someone in West Dorset can. The new policy seeks to resolve this issue. Funding for the grants and loans comes from a variety of different sources, some of which are from annual government grants, such as those for adaptations for disabled people. Loans are funded from a capital pot held by a community interest company called Lendology CIC. The policy introduces a new loan product to help people with energy efficiency and renewable energy works in response to the council declaring a climate emergency. Contributing to tackling CO2 emissions, the Healthy Homes Dorset scheme helps people with pre-existing health conditions access ECO and the new Green Homes grant by providing small but essential grants. A good example here would be the funding of clearing of a loft space to prepare it for installation, something that is not covered by an ECO grant. The equality impact assessment for the policy found that there were no negative impacts on any of the defined groups, and the policy has a positive impact on a number of others, including age, disability, carers, rural isolation, single parent families, poverty and the military. Once approved, Chair, the policy and the assistance within will be publicised to encourage take-up of the various elements of the assistance it contains. I'd like to draw attention to the table in Appendix 2 of the report, which sets out the main changes compared to the existing policies. So, Chairman, I'd like to recommend that Cabinet adopt the policy as per the recommendation 1 of the report, and the Corporate Director of Housing and Community Safety, in consultation with myself, is delegated authority to make minor changes to the policy as and when required, as set out in the second recommendation of this report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Graham. I've got a question from Councillor Paul Kimber.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you once again, Graham, for bringing this forward. I see this the partnership with the private sector, ourselves, as being really important. As Peter spelt out this morning, that the initiatives from ourselves have really got to go out, that we actually engulf the people of Dorset, and I really welcome you bringing forward, if you like, starting to think about standards and looking at the private sector. There's so many times I know I've met people in, as you said, rural isolation, that just not having enough money and being in the rural area seems to confound and double the problem. So just to say I welcome this report, and thank you, Graham.
Thank you very much, Paul. Graham, I don't think there's a question in there, so
I thank Paul, and I think that it's just time that all of us as members are aware of this, and we can take the policy out within the community and get the help to those that actually need it the most.
Yeah, I'll endorse that comment, Graham. It's a good point. No other members wishing to request to speak, so I'll open it up to the Cabinet. What I would say to start that off with, can I commend the input from the overview committee here, and I think that's really helped, Graham. You've had a thoroughly good look at it, and it does make the process of taking this through, both in terms of enacting the process, but also if it has to go to council, it gives that added strength that members have had an input, and I think that's so important. Colleagues, are we content to accept this report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Go on to agenda item 13, the new way of securing developer contributions for NHS infrastructure. And I'll hand over to David Walsh.
Thank you, Leader. Not being one to follow this crowd, I'd like to start off with thanking Andy Galpin and a huge team of people that have put this together. It's taken a lot of work over a long time, so I'm pleased we've come to what seems to be the end of this. Now, Cabinet, the purpose of this agenda item is to look at approving the document titled Exploring Developer Contributions for NHS Infrastructure, which is in your documents at Appendix A. The report sets out the findings of a task and finish group set up by the systems leadership team of our Dorset integrated healthcare system. The role of the group was to review the evidence and explore ways in which new development can contribute towards the additional pressure new homes place upon Dorset's healthcare infrastructure. The current method used by Dorset Clinical Commissioning Group and healthcare trusts is to make a request for contributions from a planning application. They are targeted at larger developments and are meant to capture contributions from all development. Historically, the strategic planning of healthcare through the planning system has been inconsistent. Working with Dorset Clinical Commissioning Group, Dorset and BCP councils have been able to secure some mitigation from proposed development towards primary care, such as doctor surgeries. But there is increasing demand on a solution that deals with the needs of healthcare comprehensively. Following a scoping exercise, the Task and Finish Group adopted the Healthy Urban Development Unit Planning Contributions Model, which we will simplify to HUDU. It is a bespoke piece of software that was designed for use by the NHS in calculating contributions. And though it was mainly used in London, the model can be programmed to use local Dorset costs and assumptions and local housing or population forecasts. The model is able to generate a cost per dwelling or per person, and its application has withstood challenge, which is very important. Using the model for individual developments, you will appreciate, would be very onerous due to the time involved in finding out the specific information for each planning application and inputting this into the model. So the simplest and recommended approach of the group is to use the housing trajectory approach, which only requires the model to be updated annually with the latest forecast of delivery and cost assumptions. This is a lot quicker, and the output is a standard cost per home, and in splitting Dorset into two areas that corresponds with the hospital trust areas, this will be a very transparent, simplistic way of working. The group recommends that each year the council's contribution is reported to the systems leadership team, and the ICS is invited to request the requisite amount of contributions for the development completed in the previous years. The contributions will mainly be collected through the community infrastructure levy in each area, though as North Dorset does not have a seal charging schedule in place, their contributions will be collected through Section 106 planning obligations. And so it is proposed that the head of planning, in consultation with myself, are given delegated powers to agree the implementation of this new approach to manage the effects on live planning applications which may be affected as a result. And so, Leader, I commend the papers to you and move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I don't see any non-executive members in the chat box, or do I? Do I see one from, yeah, David Took.
Thanks, Leader. Just a query rather than a question.
You're on mute, David.
Beg your pardon. Many people in my area don't use Dorset. They tend to go to the doctors in Fordingbridge, which is Hampshire, or they go to Salisbury Odstock Hospital, or indeed to Bournemouth and Poole hospitals. Is there any way of cross-border working to make sure that contributions which will help my residents in their need for health care, but which are provided from outwith of Dorset? I don't know if David could comment on that, please.
Thank you, David.
Yes, please, I would love to, because one of the things I know is that when my father was taken into hospital last year, it was a case of the ambulance got there, and because he was conscious, they asked him whether he wanted to go to Yeovil or to Salisbury. Very much the case that you're raising yourself. Now, there isn't cross-border working at present, and though we tried to invite Yeovil and Salisbury into this, they haven't come on board with the discussions, but we're just going to have to see where this goes. Yes, of course, there'd be a need for people to work. I mean, people are fed up with me advocating the more we should do, especially in planning, cross-border working. We say that we do it, but do we really? And I find that the problem is funding. Because funding stops at a boundary and people don't like it going across the boundary because that weakens their argument for getting more funding in if they're sharing it. These are things we've got to deal with. So it's a great point, and I've raised it myself, David, and we will all have to work together. But at present, this is just showing how we're going to be working with the 2 hospital trusts in Dorset. If other people want to come on board, and I pray they do, then it will go further.
Thank you, David. And cross-border working is something we have to do. Well, we do from here because we're almost in Hampshire. I can walk 200 yards down the road and be in Hampshire.
Yep.
So we.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Thank you
very much. Thanks. No, there are no other requests to speak. So I think Andrew, did you have your hand up, Andrew Parry?
Chair, it wasn't on this item, it was on the previous item, but it's got covered anyway. Thank you.
I was a bit quick, was I? Okay. Right, colleagues. Thank you very much, David, for your presentation. Any comments, or can we agree the report, the recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. We go on to agenda item 14, the annual adoption report, Aspire, and I'll hand over to Councillor Andrew Parry.
Thank you, Chair. The annual adoption report for Aspire Adoption summarises the work of the agency in the period from the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. It has been written to ensure that the requirements of the Statutory Adoption Guidance 2013 and the Adoption Minimum Standards of 2014 are met. As the report clearly states, Aspire is our pan-Dorset adoption service established by the county's predecessor authorities, Dorset County Council, Poole Council and Bournemouth Council. Today, Dorset Council and BCP Council remain the principal stakeholders in the organisation. The very welcome news in the 2019-20 report is that a total of 40 children across the Dorset and BCP Council areas have been adopted. Chairman, in addition to the report before us, I would like to take the opportunity to update Cabinet on some further matters after this reporting period. Firstly, that the head of Aspire, Heather Threeman, has retired from service. Our thanks to Heather for her skill and professionalism in establishing and leading Aspire, and we wish her well for the future. Replacing Heather, we welcome Jenny Waugh and look forward to working with her as we go forward. In respect of determining the future outcomes of our children in care, considerable focus has been given to a permanency plan, so those children who will be moving to adoption can do so as seamlessly as possible. The restrictions brought about by COVID-19 have at times caused a delay in routine health assessments and the business of the courts in hearing applications. It is my understanding that efforts are being made to address any backlogs in the system. There are 2 recommendations before Cabinet today. To note the activity undertaken by Aspire Adoption to secure adoption and special guardians families for children, and to note Appendix 2 that the interagency agreement is under review to reflect the fact that we are now 2 councils rather than 3.
Chair, I am available to take questions, and indeed we are joined by the Corporate Director and Executive Director as well today.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I don't see any requests to speak in the chat box from non-executive colleagues. Cabinet, any comments?
Put my hand up. That's my hand.
Who's that, Jill?
Yes, please. I'm trying to put my hand, I couldn't find the hand bit.
Jill.
No, I just think that this is really positive news again. It's good that we've had so many positive reports at Cabinet today. There's positive news. There's still more work to be done, but at least 40 plus children, you know, have permanent families now, which is great, and that's the sort of thing that we should be really celebrating. So thank you for all those involved.
Thank you very much for doing my summary of this report, Jill, because I would have said something very similar, but I actually echo your views on that at all. So well done, Andrew, and everybody else involved in this. Such an important piece of work for the council to be involved in. So can we agree, colleagues?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 15 is Cabinet Member update on policy development matters referred to an overview committee for consideration. I did check before the meeting, and there aren't any this month, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that quite a few were brought from last at the Cabinet on the 6th of October, and I'm aware that there are some in the pipeline, so going through to the overview committee. So there, on behalf of all the Cabinet, there isn't anything to report on this occasion, but I feel sure when we come to December, there will be. So moving on to Climate and Ecological Executive Advisory Panel update. Ray Bryan.
Thank you, Leader. That was opportune because my internet crashed and I've only just been able to rejoin. But thank you for the opportunity that you give me for bringing this to Cabinet each time to update members and also the general public. We've just launched our 6-week consultation on Dorset Council's climate change and ecological emergency strategy and action plan. The consultation runs from the 29th of October through to the 6th of December. At the request of the Executive Advisory Panel, which advises me on the way forward, we have produced a shortened version of the consultation document that is more suitable for use from smartphones and is directed at the younger people in our community. Can I ask everybody to please tell residents to go onto our council website and click on Climate and Ecological Emergency. You then scroll down and click on Start Here and you're into the consultation document. You will have the facilities to save your responses and revisit them at a later date before submitting your responses. I cannot express enough the importance of your responses. We are holding webinars for both members of this council and the town and parish councils. I'm pleased to say Councillor Ferrari and I are working with our teams to ensure we obtain substantial money from grants recently made available for use on our council-owned buildings. We are seeking a share of a substantial cash allocation already announced. The number we are seeking is in excess of 30 million as our first 2 grant submissions. I thought it was worthwhile just reminding both members and the public we have recently received Green Home grants of 580,000. In addition, we've been awarded a further 5.8 million for low carbon Dorset, which is enabling £18 million of local carbon Dorset low carbon projects, which will reduce our carbon footprint by at least 7,000 tonnes of CO2 gases by mid-year 2023. Whilst we face some very difficult decisions as we set our budget for next year, our energy and professionalism on seeking grants do bear fruit and are a good way forward. I make no apologies for mentioning people who have worked so hard under some very difficult conditions to achieve what we are achieving. Matt Reeks, Anthony Littlechild, Wendy Carmichael, and not least the team who have put together the consultation document which fully complies with the new rules on accessibility. I hope everybody will do their best to persuade both members, general public to respond to the consultation. Thank you for giving me that opportunity, Leader.
Thank you very much, Ray. It's always useful to get an update. It's such an important topic, so thanks very much for that. And moving on to agenda item 17, which is urgent items. There aren't any. and agenda item 18, exempt business, there isn't any. So at 11:39, I will bring the meeting to a close. Thank you all very much for attending and being involved today. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Leader.
Leader.
Thank you, members.